Yeah, well, this is a true story. I remember when it first happened, I was in my 20s, and I remember reading this story, and it left a very strong impression on me. How could any man be so evil? How can they abstract the image of the woman that they loved, the image of the child that they were going to have? How could they turn these people into detonators for a bomb? And this idea of detonation became more and more interesting to me. This moment or this device which sets off the explosion, and the idea of the detonation not only as a mechanical device but as a concept. And so then this story began to evolve of this young man who, at the age of 15, is trying to find out about his own parents, and his father has always been painted as a monster by his grandfather, and he can never understand this image of the monster. And he comes across this story of this true story of this man putting the bomb on his wife, and he begins to imagine that he himself is this child that was saved that day, and he creates this whole fantasy. And it's not really a film about an actual act of terrorism, but rather the virtual fantasy of a terrorist act that this boy imagines, and the consequences of this. We are surrounded by narratives of violence, and we are surrounded by the idea that at any point we could be the victims of a violence, and this creates this whole victim culture within the film. There are all these people who were imagining what would have happened to them if they were on this plane, or there's, and certainly now that I'm taking the film to the world, the main issue that comes up with people is that it's a film about terrorism. But, well, it is a film about terrorism, but it's actually about emotional terrorism, and it's about terrorism within a family, one particular family. And the idea of this other terrorist act becomes somehow a metaphor for what's happening within this family. Now, some people might say that this is irresponsible, but in fact it's the reality of how we are living now. We are surrounded by these greater political actions, and I think as a young person you are trying to absorb how those things matter to you, what they mean to you. The last few films have been genre works. I mean, either from Felicia's Journey to Ararat. I mean, Felicia's Journey is like a thriller. Ararat's a historic drama. Where the Truth Lies is a mystery noir. But this one is more like the earlier films, like Exotica or even Sweet Hereafter, which are not really based on any genre. They're just dramas, but told in a very unusual way, where the structure is somehow reflecting the psychology of the characters. In some ways it's a coming-of-age story, I suppose, in the time of the internet. This time where we can have contact with anyone we want immediately, but really the question remains, how do we clean ourselves of all this distraction and really come to terms with the quiet that we need to discover who we are? It's not so easy. I think it's a big challenge, that you have to have a very clear idea of when to turn this off and when to disengage, and how to choose what's really important. Because lots of things might seem to be important, but they're not really of value. They're not really going to last. They're not going to persist, even though they might be very entertaining or distracting at that moment. Seven Wonders is my dream project. It's a very ambitious film. It's a very big project. I mean, I would like it to be my next project. I've been working on it for many years. Unfortunately, it just needs a really big budget, and it's quite experimental, so I don't know how possible it will be. It looked like it was going to be very close a few months ago, because this person seemed to have all the money, but then the stock market crashed, so that's not there anymore. So, yeah, it's anyway, we'll see. Maybe it's just because I'm older, but it feels like there's not as much ability to expect that the critical community will be reading the films with the same a degree of attention. I just feel that a lot of journalists are afraid of their jobs now because of the cutbacks, and a lot of them are losing work, and there's a pressure from the editors to appeal to what the public wants to see, and that's not necessarily what the role of the critic has been in the past. The role of the critic has been to actually spend time and read work and not worry about whether or not it's going to be popular, but I think that there's a feeling now, or pressure, especially from American critics, that they have to find a way of describing a film in a very short amount of space, that they don't really have the time to digest and examine and study a film in the same way that they used to, and this has created a different. When you're early in your career, people are wanting to discover you, and they're wanting to define you. And then by this point, I'm known, and people are now maybe wondering whether or not what I'm going to do next, or where I'm going. And maybe the last few films have been surprising because I've been taking different directions. So people are a little confused about what I'm up to. But as far as I'm concerned, all I care about is just making work. And maybe in film, in opera, in theater, I'm doing installation pieces. I'm not as concerned or as panicked as some other people might be who are responding to a piece of work.